Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another great program that we have on tap. I just want to mention a few things, all have to do with actually snapshots. Um, One thing I want to just remind you of, you should all have your copy of snapshots for November. And there is a ballot in there for new offices. Um, there is an election coming up in December. So I would encourage everybody to submit the ballot by December 1st is the last day that we can accept them. Um, my name is not on that. It's not that I have been impeached, I can assure you. But my 4-year term is up and I cannot run for office. I will be around though as the immediate past president. Um, Also, you notice in snapshots, our esteemed editor, Bonnie, has asked that we try to find another proofreader for snapshots. And that notice is in snapshots this year, this month. So if you have any talents at all in reading articles and picking up on grammatical errors, or if you know a lot about cameras or photo history, because we do check all the information or try to check that gets submitted. And if you have any of those skills, that would be great. Finally, we in snapshots, you will see that there's a call out for papers for our journal. We like to get more people submitting articles about cameras, photo history, photographers that have a New England flavor. We especially like to get some maybe some student papers. We feel as though there's a lot of student research and publications out there that go to universities that never go anywhere else. So this is an opportunity, if you have know of a student, if you are a student and want to submit something that we could put in our journal, please let us know. And there's a link in there and snapshots for you to do that. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Dana and she can introduce a speaker. Dana?
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. I'm Dana G. I'm the program coordinator for PHSNE. And before I introduce our speaker, just a few housekeeping notes. The screen is being recorded. For this presentation, the best view, if you go up to the top right of your screen, is speaker, so that you'll be able to see the screen at its full resolution. And please stay muted during the presentation. If you open the chat, which you can find at the bottom of your screen, you can type your messages into the chat and we'll take them at the end. Let's see. And I think that's it. Yes, okay. So Dr. Catherine Cappy Minty is head of collections at the Center for Creative Photography in Tucson at the University of Arizona. Before moving to her current position, she was the senior researcher in art history at the Lens Media Lab at Yale University and the Robinson Family Curatorial Fellow in Photography at the Harvard Art Museums. And she received her PhD from the History of Art Department at the University of California, Berkeley. And at this meeting, we're going to pass it off to Cappy now for her presentation.
Okay, great. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. Oh, resume. Sorry, everyone. It says my screen sharing is paused. Huh. Okay, let me try this one more time. Okay. Now can everyone see that? Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that introduction, Dana. And I, of course, want to thank you and John for the invitation to speak this evening. And I also want to express my gratitude to Bonnie for advertising this talk in the newsletter and to Sid for sending my membership information. And I want to thank all of you, the members of the Photographic Historical Society of New England, for your interest in my research and for being here this evening. As my title indicates, I'm going to be speaking about the transatlantic trade in photographic materials during the 19th century. In addition to discussing some of my research in this area, at the end of the talk, I will also share a few resources that I have created for learning more about this topic. Okay, all right. So to start, I want to look at this photograph that appeared in the Philadelphia Photographer, which was a popular 19th century photography journal, in November of 1873. It's a portrait of a white woman in formal dress that, as the mount suggests, you can see this down here, was made by a photographer named W.H. Jacoby, who was based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. On the surface, this would seem to be a thoroughly American photograph. It was taken in the US by an American photographer of an American sitter, and it was circulated in an American photography journal. However, when we examine the tools and materials involved in the making of the photograph, a different understanding emerges. As the Philadelphia Photographer reported, the portrait was printed on Trapp and Munck albumen paper, which was produced in Germany, and the vignetting was done with the assistance of Weymouth's improved vignetting papers, which were imported from England. So, while made in the United States by an American photographer, the photograph, in its material and aesthetic form, points to the importance of trade with Europe to the development of American photographic practice. These transatlantic networks are often underplayed in histories of early American photography. So in this talk, I want to draw out some examples of how imported photographic goods both formed and informed 19th century photography in the United States. As many of you will know, it is often difficult, if not impossible, to know which materials were involved in the making of a specific 19th century photograph. So how can we even identify which materials American photographers were using? Luckily, we can gather a significant amount of information from journals like the Philadelphia Photographer. I fell in love with these journals after first encountering some of them at the American Antiquarian Society when I was in graduate school, and they have been central to my research ever since. Various aspects of these journals offer insight into the tools and materials used by 19th century photographers. First, as we've seen, are the incredible photographic prints that were tipped into these volumes, and you can see another example here. Second are the many advertisements for imported products that appeared in the pages of these journals. And last are notices for photography studios for sale, that occasionally detail the equipment, much of it imported, that would be included with them. So I now want to take a look at a few examples from each of these categories to see what they can tell us about the transatlantic trade in photographic materials. Okay. And we'll start by returning to the tipped-in photographic prints that appeared in these periodicals. As you might imagine, adding these prints to the periodicals required considerable cost and labor. However, periodical editors committed to including them because they allowed readers to assess the quality of a given product or a new printing technique. And in many cases, these products and innovations came from Europe. Here, for example, we see two prints of a seated white woman posing with a large book that are nearly identical. Though possibly made from the same negative, they are cropped in a different manner and have a different orientation. The one at left first appeared in the German photography journal, Photographische Mitteilungen, in November of 1871. It was published there to showcase a variation on the collotype process developed by the German printer and inventor J.B. Obernetter. The near same image was published only months later in the Philadelphia Photographer, where it served to demonstrate and explain Obernetter's innovation in photomechanical printing to an American audience. I find this pair of prints incredibly interesting because it shows just how quickly photographic knowledge and imagery moved across the Atlantic Ocean during this period, right? It was just a matter of months. And these prints also suggest the important role played by photography journals in conveying new material and aesthetic practices from one continent to another. And here are two more examples to show the range of imported products that were featured in these Tipton prints. At left is a portrait that appeared in the Philadelphia Photographer in 1869 by the well-known Paris-based studio photographer Charles Reutlinger. The journal reports that he employed a Dallmeyer lens from Britain and set the print in a lovely mount from Rojo and Houtenay, and I'm so sorry for my probably terrible pronunciation of those names, who were mount makers who were located in Paris. And then at right, we have a representation of Brunhild that appeared in the Philadelphia Photographer in 1887. And this print is by D.B. Vickery, a photographer based in Haverhill, Massachusetts. He told the journal that he used a Voigtlander portrait Euroscope lens, which came from Germany when making the negative, and printed the works on NPA albumin paper, which E. and H.T. Anthony imported from Dresden, Germany. And I should also note that this image is set in a great mount made by A.M. Collins and Sons, who are based in Philadelphia. Though not a European product, I share this to suggest just how much material information you can gather from looking at and reading about these Tipton prints. In addition to Tipton photographic prints, periodicals occasionally featured Tipton examples of products themselves. Here at right, we can see a sample of Weymouth's improved vignetting paper. This sample was included in the same issue that featured the Jacobi portrait at left that we looked at earlier. I was absolutely blown away when I first encountered this vignetting paper with its funny avocado shape in the pages of the Philadelphia Photographer. And it remains one of my favorite pieces of photographic ephemera. As you may be able to make out here, the text below the sample vignetting paper encourages the reader to cut out the sample and try it in their own work. Between the sample vignetting paper and the Jacobi print, which models its effects, we can see how this imported vignetting paper would have quite literally shaped the aesthetic practices of American photographers. All right, so I now want to move on to look at some advertisements for imported goods that appeared in these periodicals. And I'll start with an advertisement for Trapp&Munk albumin paper, which was used in the making of the Jacobi print that we've been looking at. This albumin paper was made in Friedberg, Germany, and as indicated in the ad, was imported to the US by Willy Wallach in New York. In fact, the importation of Trapp&Munk albumin paper from Germany to New York was possibly the last in a series of transatlantic crossings involved in the production of this paper. The making of albumin paper, which I want to outline here in some detail, offers a rich example of how transatlantic trade was central to the early photography industry. To understand how albumin papers were made, we want to start by considering what they were made of. During the 19th century, photographic prints were made on rag papers, which is to say papers made from discarded textiles. According to studies of the base papers of albumin prints, including James Riley's indispensable, the Albumin and Salted Paper book, albumin papers were typically made from about 85% linen fibers and 15% cotton fibers. So let's start with those linen fibers. Where would they have come from? During the 19th century, important centers for flax cultivation and linen production were Ireland, Scotland, Germany, and Russia. In most cases, flax was grown by small family farmers and sold on to large companies that spun the flax into linen thread that could then be woven into textiles. And we see there at left a spool of linen thread that was produced in Ireland. Cotton had a very different production history, one that we as Americans are quite familiar with. During the 19th century, the southern United States was the leading source of cotton. Prior to the American Civil War, this cotton was grown and picked on plantations by enslaved men, women, and children of African descent. Following the American Civil War, it was often done by formerly enslaved folks, then working as sharecroppers, as shown in the image at left. And I should note that India, Egypt, and Brazil also emerged as important exporters of cotton during the American Civil War, but the US remained an international leader following the conflict. So now that we know where these materials came from and who produced them, we can now consider how they came to be used in photographic paper. First, the linen and cotton would be imported to large textile factories, such as those in England, where working class men, women, and children would weave them into various fabrics. And while the image at left shows a very orderly textile factory, this was in fact a very dangerous and difficult working environment. The fabrics that were produced at these factories would be sold and crafted into clothing, curtains, upholstery, and numerous other articles. After being used and worn out, these textiles would then be collected by rag pickers who would sell them on to paper mills. There were two primary mills that made the base papers for photographic use during the 19th century. The first was Blanchet Frere et Quelbet in Rive, France. And again, I'm so sorry for my poor pronunciation. And the second was Steinbach and Company in Prussia. The paper from the French mill was often called Rive paper, and the paper from the Prussian mill was often referred to as Saxe paper. And you can see these designations used here in this advertisement for photographic papers that were made by John R. Clemens in Philadelphia. At these European mills, specialized craftsmen would break down the rags, bleach them, and form them into papers. From there, the papers would be sold to photographic paper companies for albuminizing or coating with egg whites. At these companies, such as Trapp and Munk in Germany or John Clemens in the United States, it was often working class women who applied the albumin coating to the Rive and Saxe base paper, as we can see in the image at left. So here at top, we see these the kind of barrels of egg whites and the coating being applied, and then at bottom, the women are drying the coated paper. Once coated, dried, and packaged, these papers would then be sold to various consumers around the world for making prints, including the one by Jacobi that we've been discussing. While it may seem excessive to do what I have just done and trace the possible origins of the fibers in this paper, for me, this kind of deep material analysis helps me, I think, to look at 19th century photographs in new ways. We can not only appreciate the centrality of transatlantic trade to the material foundations of American photography, but also glimpse the range of people and labor involved in making the medium possible. While most histories of 19th century American photography focus on the role played by individual photographers and inventors, who are most often white and male, taking a closer look at photographic materials shows the important role played by women, the enslaved, and the working class, groups who are often seen as peripheral to the making of 19th century photography. And for me, this is one of the key reasons why thinking about photographic materials and their trade really matters. All right, so the last element of these periodicals that I want to discuss is the notices of studios for sale. And we see 3 examples here advertising studios for sale in various parts of the United States. At left, we see one offered in Dallas, which, as it says, at the time was a fairly small city of 25,000 people. At center, we see one offered in Chicago by Mrs. W.H. Nason, and this one has this, fantastic illustration accompanying it. This is sort of rare to see these illustrations of studios in these advertisements, so I love this one. And then at right, we see offered the New York studio of well-known photographer Abraham Bogardus. And it's quite impressive to see that the studio was in operation for 38 years. I find these notices fascinating and think they could serve as the basis for a range of studies on the business history of photography. But here I want to focus on what they can tell us about the centrality of transatlantic trade to American photographic practice. As you may have read, each of these ads calls attention to the equipment that would be sold with the studio. The one at left here mentions plenty of Dallmeyer and Ross instruments. The one here at center says all the lens are first class, Dallmeyer, Voigtlander, Steinheil, etc. And then the one at right here says, entire apparatus, first class, Dallmeyer lenses, etc. All of the lens manufacturers cited here are European. Dallmeyer and Ross were British, and Voigtlander and Steinheil were German. While a number of well-regarded American lenses emerged during this period, such as Harrison's Globe lens and Zantmeyer's namesake lens, these for sale notices suggest a preference for European-made lenses. Indeed, I have only rarely found instances where American lenses were mentioned in these notices. We find something similar when we look at mentions of lenses in notes on the making of the Tipton photographic prints featured in the Philadelphia Photographer. I tallied all mentions of lenses used in making the negatives for these prints and found that about 58% of them were manufactured in Europe. And while this isn't an overwhelming majority, to me it still seems significant. This preference for European lenses among some American photographers is likely due to the fact that they were very well crafted and frequently won top prizes at international exhibitions, a fact that was well publicized in advertisements for these lenses, something that we can see in these 2 examples here. As a result of this, photographers working on either side of the Atlantic, whether in Dallas or London or Munich, would have often looked through the same model of lens when making their work. So up to this point, I have focused primarily on materials and goods that were imported from Europe to the United States. But of course, trade also went the other way. My favorite examples of this are the painted backdrops made by Lafayette Seavey, an artist who was based in New York City. Seavey is, I think, a really fascinating character who probably deserves his own research project, but I'll just share a little bit about him here. He started his career as a studio photographer, but transitioned to making elaborate painted backdrops and studio accessories in the 1860s. And you can see 2 examples of his painted backdrops here. At left, we see one that's sort of the backdrop for a Tipton print that appeared in the Philadelphia Photographer in 1878. And then at right, we see one that appeared in a Tipton print from the German photography journal, Photographic Mitteilungen, also from 1878. Such was CV's international acclaim that his name appears even larger than that of the photographer in the caption in the German journal. You can see that here. Sadly, however, he is mostly forgotten today. Beyond demonstrating an interest in and demand for American photographic materials in Europe, CV's popular backdrops point to the commonalities between American and European photography during this period. CV produced his backgrounds in multiples, which means that the one adorning J.C. Schwarwachter's Berlin studio likely hung in studios elsewhere in Europe and the United States. So, whether having their portrait made in Berlin or New York, photographic subjects of the 19th century would have inhabited a shared transatlantic imaginary made possible by the circulation of goods. And while histories of 19th century photography are often divided by national borders, so thinking, histories of American photography, British photography, German photography, and so on, I would suggest that the trade in photographic materials more broadly suggests that we have a lot to learn by thinking across rather than exclusively within those borders. There are numerous other examples I could share from these periodicals to illuminate the important role played by the transatlantic trade in photographic materials to the development of American photography. But for now, I want to share some resources that you all can use if you want to take a deeper dive into this topic. The first is an online database that I created with Adrian Lundgren from the Library of Congress, as well as Damon Crockett and Paul Messier from the Lens Media Lab, which was formerly located at Yale. The database is called TIPS, which is short for Tipped-in Photographic Prints from Early Photography Manuals. And this project stems from a survey that Adrian and I did of the Library of Congress's just absolutely amazing collection of early photography periodicals and manuals that feature tipped-in photographic prints. Its collection and our database not only include American photography publications, but also international ones, like the Photographic Mitteilungen that I've mentioned, the British Journal of Photography, and others. For each tipped-in print we encountered, and we found about 1,200 of them, we noted all the information we could about who made it, where it was made, and the tools and materials involved in its making. This includes papers, negative plates, lenses, mounts, coatings, and accessories like Weymouth's improved vignetting papers. And you can see an example of kind of the information we gathered here at right. So the print that we're looking at appeared in the Canadian Photographic Journal in 1894. And the negative for the print was made by Mrs. R.M. Wilson of Boston. And as the journal noted, she used Stanley dry plates when making the negative. And although we don't know the printer, we know that it was made on American Aristotype papers. So as you can see from this example, the database is also a great source for studying American photographic goods and their uses. TIPS is a really fun and information-rich tool, and I'd be happy to show more of it in our discussion. The second resource I want to share is a story map project I created after completing the TIPS database. As I was building TIPS with my colleagues, I was doing a lot of research about the various manufacturers of photographic goods that we encountered. And I realized that there weren't many good resources out there for learning about these manufacturers. So I decided to create my own. Organized by product type, this story map project offers basic information about the companies behind various photographic papers, lenses, dry plates, and accessories. And here you can see the page for photographic papers, which locates each company on the map and gives a brief history of their operation. While far from exhaustive, it provides what I hope is a helpful starting place for learning about these often understudied manufacturers. I would also be happy to show more of this site in our discussion if there's interest, and I will share the links for both this and tips in the chat shortly. All right, so that concludes my talk for now. Thank you so much, and I look forward to your questions and our discussion. And I should say that I'm also happy to talk about my work at the Center for Creative Photography and things going on there if there's any interest in that as well.
Thank you, Kathy. Really wonderful resources, really great presentation. Thank you so much. We have a tradition of unmuting and giving our presentation a round of applause. So
Oh, that's so kind. Thank you.
um, yeah, that was great. It was so wonderful to see the journals and highlighted and featured.
Yeah.
Um, I know before we were on the presentation, John was mentioning a publication he was trying to track down.
Oh, yes.
So yeah, let's look at the questions in the chat. And
Okay, let me take a look. I haven't looked at that. Yes.
Lawrence says, what was the typical circulation of these periodicals? Tipped in photos must have added tremendously to the overhead and cost of production. They must have been expensive as well. Do you know how much they went for
Oh,
per?
that's a great question. So I think the circulation was actually pretty robust because many of these survive in a number of libraries, across the US and elsewhere. So I think given the survival rate, I mean, I think, yeah, it was very good. And I should say that journals in the US were sent to Europe and elsewhere as well. And the same, European journals often came to the United States. Indeed, these did add to overhead a lot and also the cost to, those who subscribed. So there was an option for photographers who subscribed who wanted to get the information in the journal but didn't want the tipped in print. So they could pay a lower rate for their subscription if they didn't want to have the tipped in prints in them. I would need to look back and see how much they cost per issue. That's a very good question. Yes, but it would say, I think, on any, maybe of the title pages of them. So that should be an easy thing to find.
And second part of that question was the vignetting paper for contact printing.
Yes, yes, that is correct. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I had never seen a vignetting paper like that before, and when I first found this, I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And was really quite delighted to see something like that. It's also very good if you're ever teaching about vignetting. When students see that, it's a nice way to kind of show what's going on there.
We have a question from
Laura.
What were the albumin papers treated with to make them light sensitive?
So most of them were not treated before they were sold to photographers. Photographers would then apply, silver salts to, make them light sensitive. Though there are some examples of sensitized albumin papers that were sold, though I don't have a lot of information about them. But for convenience sake, you can imagine that would be a wonderful thing to have. But they weren't that common, or at least I haven't found out that much information about them. I should also say, actually, on this question that when you read about each of these tipped in prints, all the photographers kind of share their recipes, for making the negative and then also the print. And it's really kind of fascinating to see the kind of slight variations that people are doing, how they're learning from one another. They often say, like, where did I get my recipe from? And so the information there is just really incredible if you're interested in the kind of chemical work that 19th century photographers were engaged in.
Donna's just asking, what exactly does tipped in mean?
Great. Okay, so in this moment when a lot of these periodicals were being published, this is before a lot of forms of photomechanical printing were like widely available. So in order, for example, to make albumin prints available in the journals, they had to, first attach them to like a mount or a page, and then they had to kind of bind them separately into the journal themselves. So the question about how, these would have added tremendously to the printing costs is quite right, because it's not only getting all the materials to make each of these prints, which was probably, they were making probably thousands of them for each issue, but then actually kind of binding them into the periodical would have been an additional labor itself.
Great, thank you. A question from David who says, can you
Yeah.
say about the international trade in gelatin plates from England, France, Belgium to American jobbers like Scoville?
Yeah, this is a great question. And definitely like jobbers were really important as like kind of central like middlemen for, making European products available to 19th century photographers. That case of the NPA albumin papers that were sold by E&HT Anthony is a kind of good example of that they kind of like bought in bulk from Dresden and then kind of branded it with their own name to kind of sell to the American market. And I think definitely something similar was happening in the trade in gelatin plates with Scoville, though I'd have to kind of dig into more research to find more specifics about that. But definitely they were kind of a really important part of the trade. Though what's interesting to see is like over the course of the second half of the 19th century, you see a real consolidation in the market. So like in the 1860s and 70s, you have a lot of kind of like smaller importers, like the Willie Wallet character that we looked at importing the Trap and Mook albumin paper. But as time goes on, you end up with these larger kind of companies, something like, E&HT Anthony, who begin to dominate the market and become the primary importers. I think because they're operating in bulk, and able to get, kind of better deals for what they're selling and then, offer at better prices in the US.
Thank you. Lawrence is asking about your current work, and maybe we can take a look at some of the databases in action. That would be great too.
Yeah, yeah. I will say a little bit about my current work. So I'm continuing to think about photographic paper. That's like been a huge thing that I've been thinking about. So I did this project and was looking a lot at 19th century, photographic paper. Where did it come from? What were the materials involved? I got super interested in that. And then I've written a couple articles about photographic paper making at Kodak and like so in the around like the 1920s, you switch from rag papers that are being imported from Europe. And again, those two companies that I mentioned, these mills, the Reeves and Sachs paper, um, they like kind of joined forces in the late 19th century, became I think it's called the General Paper Company. It's like a very kind of bland name like that. But they provided rag papers to Kodak for a long time. And it wasn't really until, as I said, the 1920s, that they started using pulp paper, so paper made from tree pulp. And so I've gotten really interested to looking at like where are these trees coming from? What mills are they in partnering with? What does that work look like? And there's been a lot of interesting work, and my former colleague Paul Messier at the Lens Media Lab has done a lot of this, where you can actually really closely assess the fiber contents of different photographic papers to kind of see like what is the composition of those papers, what kind of trees are involved, how does that change over time? And he's been using that in interesting ways to help kind of date and authenticate photographs. I'm sort of more interested in the labor side of that and also like the pollution that came from making pulp paper in the 20th century because paper making was a, yeah, pretty pollutive industry. All right, and I can pull up those links.
Great.
Let me put tips into the chat. So there's that. And then let me get the story map. I've like lost my window. Okay, here's the introduction for that. There we go. About Harron, who's the senior photographs conservator at the Library of Congress. They were, like every institution, they were facing some space issues and were thinking that they should move all of their 19th century photography manuals off-site because they had seen that advertised on places like Hathi Trust and the Internet Archive and elsewhere. Adrian, though, was like, whoa, hold up. These are incredibly valuable resources for scholars interested in 19th century photographs. And in fact, the digitization in places like the Internet Archive and elsewhere, while very helpful in making these accessible, sort of misses out on some of the incredible like physical material value of these journals. And so she wanted to do a project to kind of do an inventory of their collection to look specifically at the Tipton prints. And so I joined her at that point, and it was almost 10 years ago. This is a very long
Hi there.
project.
Are you resting comfortably?
You're
up for dinner.
No, no such luck. I'm actually just finishing up a Zooming, but that's okay. Okay.
But- Clint, could you mute?
Shall I let you go?
Thanks.
No worries. But yeah, we, first just collected all this information, looking through, again, the Library of Congress's collection of these is amazing, because they were collected for copyright purposes, which is really interesting. And that's one of the reasons why some of those samples are still included in the journals, because they weren't there for, an individual photographer to use. It was just they were being collected for copyright purposes. And so they just had, an incredible amount of great material. And after doing that, we then partnered with my colleagues at the Lens Media Lab. My colleague Damon is a data scientist to make the database so this information could be more broadly accessible.
Great. Thank you. Donna just had a question. Is there a way to contact you if we have historic information? So maybe at the end we could drop your email into the chat.
Yeah, here, I can put that in here. Make sure I spelled everything right. Okay. Yeah, I'll give my work email, and then you can also find that on the Center for Creative Photography website.
Does anyone have any questions they would like to ask live? You're welcome. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I wonder if I could ask a question to everybody that I proposed to Cappy right before we started today. I'm doing a paper for the 2025 journal, and I'm trying to track down a publication called the New England Photographer. Specifically, it's the April of 1905 issue. I have not been able to find anything at all of any institution or library that has that. And I'm wondering if anybody in the audience may could let me know if they ever heard of that publication, and if so, where I may be able to find it. That would be great. New England Photographer was the name of it.
I can do some sleuthing for you. So
Well, it looks like it might be even rarer than I thought. So,
Have you tried Digital Commonwealth?
yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Also, this is a strange suggestion, but eBay might be a good resource. You can often, find great stuff on there.
Thank you, folks.
And maybe try the AI version of Google. I've found some surprising things in there.
A version of Google.
Yeah, if you go into the AI button and you have it do a deep dive, it can search the internet. in some presumably different ways than it normally does to pull out information. And I've found some pretty arcane stuff in there. AI mode,
Great.
it's called.
Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
I think I know why.
John, it looks like Yale has it. I don't know if they have any of it digitized.
Oh,
Help
really?
me try it.
And Duke and the Getty Research Institute also.
What was that last one?
The Getty Research Institute.
Getty, they didn't have,
Our
I don't
library
think,
has it. I don't know if any of them are digitized, but those three places do have it. I'm not sure about that issue.
You in there.
John, I
So-
can send you the contact information for Getty.
great, thank you. Thank you, Sid. I didn't mean to take up so much time out of Kathy's presentation. It's just so interesting. And it's such a need for the type of work you're doing, Kathy, in my opinion. It's so great to hear somebody actually taking this challenge on.
Yeah, I love these journals. If you ever get a chance to spend some time with them, they're just magical. You learn so much. It's like being thrown back into the 19th century and into conversations with photographers of the moment. I always love coming back to them. So this is really fun to work on this presentation and to look through them again. Can't get enough.
The photography manuals, like the published volumes that weren't periodicals, the advertising in the back was often so, there was like a good 10, 12 pages at
Oh, yeah.
least. So there's amazing like national advertisements,
Yes.
or depending on the publisher.
Yeah, and this is one thing about some of the digitized versions that you come across, just depending on who digitized things, they sometimes leave out the advertisements, which is so sad because I think they're some of the most fascinating things, that you can kind of find. So again, one reason to kind of plug, trying to locate some of these in person if you can, but there are some good digitized copies. I think the Boston Public Library on the Internet Archive has a really good set of the Philadelphia Photographer, which is very near and dear to my heart.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
The Center for Creative Photography, can you talk a little bit about what it is, what its contents are?
Yeah. This is a great question. So the Center for Creative Photography was founded in 1975 by then University of Arizona president John Schaefer, who was very interested in photography and was especially interested in the work of Ansel Adams. He met Ansel Adams, at some event and was like, kind of boldly put forth, like, what's your plan for your archive? Do you want it to come to the University of Arizona? And Adams responded saying, that he would only want his archive to come to an institution that also collected the work of other photographers. And, this was a moment when, there wasn't a huge amount of collecting of photography at the institutional level. I mean, especially of archives of photographers. And so the Center for Creative Photography was founded at U of A. We're celebrating our 50th year, which is very exciting. I should say we primarily collect 20th century and now into 21st century photography in North America. We do have some 19th century photography, but I would say the 20th century is really our strength. And we're sort of an interesting place because we are both like a museum. We have galleries where we show exhibitions of photographic works, but then we also operate as a research center. And so we have scholars coming from around the world to look at the archives related to various photographers and also see their prints. And I should say that we also have a fellowship program. We just opened it up and applications are due January 26th. So you can go check out our website if you are at all interested in coming to do research at the center. The collections are truly incredible. We have the 50th anniversary show up now, and I think people know us for our print collection, but the archive collections are just amazing. It's like we have Ansel Adams' hat, we have Edward Western's wedding ring, Eugene Smith's wallet, and like his fingerprints. Like it's fascinating the material that we have here. So it's another place where I think like the 19th century journals are a place to kind of dive into conversations with, that period of photographers. But our collections at CCP kind of allow you to do the same thing. And it's actually interesting. We'll have collections where it's half a set of correspondence and then the another archive has the other set. So you can really get like the back and forth between people at a certain period. Yeah, it's just an incredible institution, and I'm really glad to be there.
Are you open to the public? In other words, do you have regular hours, or does one have to make an appointment?
We do have regular hours. We're open to the public from Wednesday to Sunday. And then if you want to make a research appointment to look at the archive materials, you can do that through our website. You can, we use a program called Aon, and you can create an account and then request any materials that you want to view.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, would love for people to come visit Tucson, especially this time of year. It's very nice here.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Anyone else have a live question they would like to ask?
Sid, did you have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, do you have a video hookup set up for when you can't visit on location? Do you have interns who could set it up with a camera on a flatbed?
Yes, we do. Yes, we
Oh,
do
good.
do virtual reference appointments.
Okay.
My colleague, Ashley Swinford, who's our public services archivist, does a great job of that. It's something we started during the pandemic, and we've continued because it's proven really popular. Because, of course,
Mhm.
Tucson, a lovely place, but not always the easiest to get to. So, yes, virtual reference is a great way to connect with our collections virtually.
Okay.
Thank you, Sid.
This is Laura. I have another question as well. Regarding the Tipton prints, so you're saying they put them directly into the booklets themselves, correct? Wow,
Yes,
that sounds very expensive and a lot of manual labor.
yes.
Do you know approximately how many were printed for each publication, or is that an unknown?
It's hard to say because I don't have the total subscription information. It's very well the case that if I look through one of these enough, they'd be like, "Can you believe it? We've reached so many subscribers." But then, as I said, like some people subscribe to the version with the Tipton prints, and some said,
Right.
I just want the text version. So then it would be hard to kind of say, which ones, how many of those with the Tipton prints. Were circulated. But I mean, I would guess it's in the thousands, given how many, you can find in institutions or on eBay or, in
Right.
very many places. It's the nice thing about these journals is that they are fairly widely accessible or found at a number of libraries, universities, and so they're not too hard to track down.
Okay. So another part of that question is, do you happen to know if it was a newsstand publication? Was it also sold at newsstands?
You know what? I don't know that. Mm, My sense is maybe it went just directly to subscribers.
Yes, it
Um,
sounds like a very specialized type of publication and probably not like National Geographic or whatever that you'd pick up.
yes, it's very nerdy, I will say. You would have
Yeah.
to be like really into photography to want to get this journal. Because it's really getting into the nitty-gritty. Yeah, I would not say it's a kind of general audience publication. But if you like photography, it's really, really amazing. And one of the other things, I didn't even mention this in the talk, but this is another kind of transatlantic element. They had kind of foreign correspondence. So they would have photographers who were based in like England, Germany, France, send kind of newsletters saying, hey, here's what's going on here, so you can be up to date with what's going on in photography internationally. And those are really, really fun to read as well.
So
Every,
digest type of information.
what's that?
digest type of information.
Yes, exactly. And I should say and this, that the Philadelphia Photographer and others definitely copied articles from other journals and reprinted them often without permission. Just, probably to pad out an issue occasionally. So that's another way I should say that photographic information spread quite
Yeah,
widely.
I'm not sure there were even laws against that in those days.
No, there
Yeah.
really weren't, especially if they were printing something from Europe. That was totally fair game until yeah, much later in the 19th century, like in the 1890s.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know exactly when in the process the pictures were tipped in? Was it before the periodicals got bounded up or after? And who did that? Was it just manual labor, children?
Definitely manual labor. Yes. It would have been done at the end. What's interesting is that, they would have written out the text for like, okay, here's our tipped in print for the month. Let us tell you a little bit about it. What's very cool is they often, if you look at different journals for the same month, like different copies, they somehow have different prints, but by the same photographer. So that's kind of cool. So there's variation among these, even on a given month. But they'll say, okay, we have prints by whoever it is. Some of you might be seeing this one, some of you might be seeing this one, and here's the information about it. So they would have coordinated this pretty well in advance. I mean, I think the lead time to do all the labor would have been pretty significant. But then it would have, I think, come in, the prints themselves would have been kind of, bound with the issue towards the end after the rest of the publication was printed.
So they would have had multiple tipped in prints in each issue, depending on
No,
what
it would
if
be
they
sort of
ran
like
out?
for a given issue, say you were getting the April 1873 issue. Say you and I were both subscribers. It's
Right.
possible that I would get a slightly different tipped in print that you would.
When you say slightly different, you mean like the mirror image ones that were shown earlier?
Or it would be like, often I should say most of these, the images that are tipped in are studio portraits. So it might be like, here's an image of one sitter, you're getting an image of another sitter. But maybe they're both showing off like the same cool new studio furniture that someone has or something like that.
Okay.
I think what you're trying to communicate is that the tipped-in prints in each periodical is only one or two per periodical, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
But these
It's
were
not like
published
there's
monthly.
20 or 40
so
of these things.
no.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, they were published monthly. So for me, that's still like very impressive that they were able to coordinate and do this. And yeah, it's really kind of left us, as I hope I've showed, like with a real wealth of material information about how photographers were working.
Were the photographers paid, or is it like an advertisement and they're paying the publication to feature the print?
I think it was I think it was a little bit of I don't think there was actually money exchange, but it was definitely a major kind of like advertisement for them. So that was a big thing. And then sometimes it was like, oh, we were having a prize issue. I think we saw one of them that said, this was the gold medal award winner for something. So sometimes they would have a prize picture that they would showcase in the journal. Yeah.
So you said that, sorry, I don't have a camera here, but so you said that subscriptions and some of them would get the tipped in and some of them would get nothing. So
Yes.
is the layout the same? So it would just be blank where the picture went?
So the picture would be like its own page in and
Oh,
of
it was its
itself.
own page.
So it would just be
Okay.
like that page was just not included.
Not there.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Just curious.
Yeah, no, that would really mess the layout if it was kind of more integrated with the text.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, wasn't the tipped-in photo more or less an image that was pasted in part on the page, so that in essence you could actually remove it and frame
Yes,
it if
and
you wished.
yes, that is correct. Yeah, it was, and it's on slightly different paper. It's on heftier paper, to kind of support the print.
We are just about at 8:30. I see that there was a question asking for another person's comment.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, Kodak's transition to fiber paper. Would love to learn more about that if anyone has information to share, because I'm really interested in that. Yeah, if that's going to be a presentation, I will be there in February. Yes.
Yeah. I know, Dave, did you just want to briefly mention about that?
Or are you talking about my February presentation?
About the transition to wood pulp paper.
Oh, that's not my question. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Sid just asked, could Dr. Gents comment about Kodak's transition to fiber paper?
Oh, I have no knowledge of that. I'm sorry. Okay, I'll be honest. But it's a fascinating thought that they went from rag paper to this wood pulp paper.
Yes.
Yeah, you'd have to find somebody more learned than that. My history begins in 1934. Okay, but
If
thank you.
if folks are interested in learning more about this, there's a great book that you can essentially download online by Kit Funderburk, who is the former manager of Kodak's paper mill. It offers an incredible kind of history of photographic paper production at Kodak. Has a lot of this information. I found it so useful. It's a great resource.
Great. Do you remember the title or where you can access that, Kathy?
Let me see if I can find it right now.
Okay. While we're looking for that, I just wanted to quickly mention that in December is our holiday show and tell meeting. And so I'm going to put the sign up link in the chat if you would like to share for 5 minutes on
There it
any
is.
camera.
Hopefully that link works. It's like a link to a PDF.
Oh, Kevin Weaver, yeah. Yes, it does work.
Okay, good. Yeah, if you're interested in photo paper, such an interesting read.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. If there are no more questions, we're going to close for the evening. Thank you again, Kathy. This was really wonderful. And this will be available on YouTube in about a week or so, so that you can share the link out. Thank you so much for being part of PHSNE this year. I hope we'll see you at future presentations. I'm seeing everyone is thanking you and saying it was great in the comments.
Thank you so much, everyone. This was a pleasure, and thank you so much for having me. And please be in touch.
Yes, thanks so much. All right, everyone, please join us in December for our show and tell. If you have any questions, you can reach me at programs@phsne.org. Everyone is saying thank you. It was so great. Really
Thank you,
appreciate
everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
That's it. Good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, Sid.
Bye-bye. Great to see you.
Good seeing you.